Balan Wonderworld is not that bad. I thought I'd start with that statement so you know what direction this is gonna go in. I had never played Balan Wonderworld before this review, but I always had this preconception that this game was awful. It stems from word of mouth. People would always bash it whenever given the chance. Surely not that many people have played this game though. I mean, the sales bombed and it effectively became a laughingstock upon release. Now, I don't want to point fingers, but I can imagine that some reviewers have made the problems with this game seem worse than they are, and people have latched on to their opinion. Yeah, Balan isn't perfect or anything, but it's not one of the worst games ever like some people would have you believe. My curiosity for Balan spiked once director Yuji Naka got arrested late last year. Surely this game isn't so bad that he needs to be arrested for it. In 2018, Yuji Naka joined Square Enix and would later form the subsidiary studio the Balan Company. Balan Wonderworld was co-developed by RZest, with a key staff member being Naoto Oshima, a former Sega artist who helped with the creation of Sonic the Hedgehog alongside Yuji Naka. With these two platforming brains combined, things should have gone smoothly, but upon release in 2021, word quickly spread on how awful the game is. I just want to preface this review by stating that I've never watched or read a full review of this game. I've taken a glance at the meddling scores, but never been bothered to look further into it, except for now. I'm not going to be comparing this game to Sonic the Hedgehog or Nights into Dreams either. Besides the obvious art style similarities, all three games differ so much that it would be pointless and rather unfair to begin throwing comparisons around. On that note of the art style, this game looks amazing. Everything has that Japanese anime charm. It's also bubbly and rounded. While the humans look like what you'd expect from an art style like this, it's Balan who steals the show. His design really stands out. His red, white and gold suit catches your eye straight away, and then you realise that his eyes are a part of his heart. Perhaps it was inspired from a certain platformer released in 2017, but it looks really good for Balan. It makes me question what is going on under his hat though, because it seems like he has a face there considering that's where his mouth is, but that's never revealed. The main antagonist Lance's design is a contrast to the cutesy tone of the game, but that's to be expected. I quite like how he looks. The darker colours and long tentacle-like hair looks cool. His hands are massive though, they're probably the same size as his head and torso. The two main characters are called Emma Cole and Leo Craig. These are two of the worst names they could have gone with. Two first names for their full names, really? I like how you can choose their skin colour though, nothing amazing by today's standards, but hey, it makes it more inclusive for those who like it. I think maybe a slider or something like that would have been better than having 4 standard options. I mean, it's not like you can change the outfits or anything, this is the only character customization in the game. There's no differences between these characters either, besides how their endings are different. Not like it matters much because you can just watch the other one through the theatre mode on the main menu after finishing the game. The basic gist of Balan goes like this. Both Emma and Leo were drawn to the Balan Theatre, a magical place overseen by the mysterious Balan. Both characters travel through 12 worlds born from the hearts of adults and children, but the pair are opposed by Lance. This guy receives no development or anything, he's purely just an evil opponent for Balan. Anyway, after traversing through 12 worlds featuring 2 stages and a boss fight each, Leo and Emma defeat Lance. Balan and Lance's true forms are revealed and they're shown to be human. I don't think it's ever stated why they have a human form, and this game sold so poorly that we can write off the idea of a sequel expanding upon the idea. Emma and Leo return to the human world and both have a good day. Pretty simple stuff. Balan can be considered a baby's first video game type of deal, especially with the controls. You don't have to worry about this being a crazy hard to learn game or anything, because Balan is a game that can be played entirely using 2 buttons. The shoulder buttons change the character's ability, and then literally every other button on the controller can be used to do everything else. This makes the menus awful to navigate. Every button does the same thing, so to go backwards through the menus when you finish finding what you need, you have to scroll all the way to the bottom and click back. I know this is such a first world problem, but it shouldn't be one in the first place. Why can't one of the buttons be used as a back button? It would save more time and make these menus less confusing to navigate. And also, this game was released in 2021, not the 90s. The menus themselves are also rather ugly. The main menu when you boot up the game is nice, but when you delve into the options, it's just grey bars. The gameplay of Balan is a simple collectathon. Make your way through each stage, discovering secret areas and using the powers of different costumes to find the valuable Balan statues, which serves as the means of progression. There are 228 gold Balan statues and then an additional 72 collectible multicolored Balan statues found in the extra levels after beating the game. That's a lot of stuff to collect, and you will need to collect at least some of the gold Balan statues to progress and make your way to the final boss. Scrounging around looking for these guys is where the main enjoyment of the game comes into play. There's so many secret areas, little nooks and crannies throughout the stages. It really rewards exploration. This is when the game is the most enjoyable and is by far the best way of collecting these things. An alternative way to collect these statues though is through Balan's Bound. These two words should send shivers down the spine of any Balan player. Look at me, I haven't even talked about the real gameplay yet, but Balan's Bound triggers a deep rage within me that I'm gonna have to get out the way right now. Within the levels, you'll find a magical golden floating hat which transforms into Balan. Running into him will trigger a quick time event minigame, one which has Balan flying around, either fighting Lance or other dastardly things. These are quite possibly the worst part about this game. You have to align a silhouette of Balan to what he's about to do, and if you miss the opportunity to get it perfectly, even by a second, you don't get a gold Balan statue. Instead, you have to replay the entire stage up until that point and try again. This can be put up with for the first couple of chapters, but towards the end of the game, when 3 Balan statues per stage have to be collected this way, I simply ignored the golden hat and went about my merry way. As you'd expect, the further you get into the game, the longer these segments become, requiring more input and perfect concentration. What is the point of me attempting these when I'm not really bothered and run the risk of messing it all up at the last hurdle, and then I'd have to go through all the stage again just to replay it. Also, it's just not engaging. There's only so much fun that can be got from waiting for things to align and pressing a button. The appeal here was obviously the grandiose fight Balan partakes in, but they're all so similar, they blend together and become one. It feels like a PowerPoint presentation or something, the way the silhouette of Balan flies around, and the whole thing is stupid. I'm not sure why a game that only requires one button to play everything needed a quick time event minigame, or why there's so many of these things to play. Did no one see how repetitive these feel, and how frustrating they are when you mistime an input? I'd rather run around the stages and collect statues that way, which is exactly what I'm going to do. Balan Wonderworld divides its stages into chapters. Essentially, these are 12 different worlds spawned from the hearts of 12 everyday people. Before beginning each chapter, a nice little CGI cutscene begins that showcases the life of somebody and all the problems they encountered in their day. They really didn't need to pop off so much with the cutscenes. These look like they're ripped directly from Dragon Quest XI. So saying that, I am impressed with how nice these cutscenes are. Too bad I had no interest in any of them. Each chapter is a self-contained story, so none of them overlap or carry on as you progress, which makes it harder to get attached to anything going on. After defeating the boss of each chapter, the game wraps things up and swiftly moves on to the next set of stages. The stages themselves are rather decent, to be honest. I can't think of a particular world that irked me or one that drove me to boredom. I'll admit, some are far better than others, but as a whole, there's nothing too overwhelmingly bad. Each stage is an enclosed space to run around in. Think of Super Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie. However, a problem that becomes immediately noticeable when starting the first stage is how slow the running speed is. By the end of the game, I got used to it, but it can become a bit of a drag sometimes, especially regarding the costumes. The costumes are the power-ups in this game, and I'm pretty sure there's like 80 of them or something. Sounds like a lot, but some costumes overlap with their abilities. Each stage has 2 or 3 scattered about, and the challenges within are based around what sort of abilities the costume gives you. To even unlock these costumes, you first have to find keys around the level, then once you found a key, take it back to the costume to unlock it. These things can be split into 2 distinct categories, ones that allow you to jump and the others that don't. The ones that allow you to jump are mainly used for platforming challenges, obviously. There's various examples of costumes that allow you to float or walk in the air for a bit, and while that's nothing amazing, it can be fun waiting around to see what ability you'll be given next. The costumes that don't allow you to jump are mainly combat orientated. Sometimes you have to stand still for them to begin shooting, or other times you have to press a button to get it to work. These can be rather frustrating to use, mainly because they take away your ability to jump. The stage does compensate for this, and in the areas that requires one of these costumes, staircases and ramps are there aplenty. I don't understand why the jump button couldn't be its own thing, but to be fair, I never ran into an area I couldn't progress in because I couldn't jump. There's a lot of one-off costumes as well, and these range in quality. There's a costume that changes you into a fox, which turns into a cube randomly. You can't walk, you can't move, you're just stuck as a box. This is probably meant for some specific puzzle within a stage, but I never used it. There's a costume that makes you super speedy randomly, which is a great improvement to the running speed. It should be like this permanently. And finally, there's a costume that turns you into a one-man band penguin, allowing you to stand on platforms and put on a show. It sounds alright, but the main problems with these costumes are this. Number 1, there are far too many that are similar. The costume count could easily be reduced if more buttons were used, and different costumes possessed multiple abilities. Number 2, the costumes serve as your life. Once you collect 3 costumes, you can be hit up to 3 times without having to respawn. It's only when the kids don't have any costumes equipped that you will die. Number 3, the costumes that randomly choose when to work are annoying. Why can't I have full control and choose when I want to use the ability? Number 4, I think there should be an option to return to the kid's default look, maybe by pressing up on the D-pad or something. This way, if you only have costumes that you can't jump with, it would allow you to jump and access secret areas. And the 5th and final point is how you have to grind and bulk up on these costumes to keep them in your inventory. Some costumes are more valuable than others, and there's a few towards the end of the game that are useful in the earlier levels. That means there is a decent amount of replayability here and backtracking if you're going after 100%. Throughout the stages, checkpoint markers also serve as a way to access your wardrobe and to view all the costumes that you've collected. However, if you get hit while wearing a costume and there's none left in your wardrobe, you have to go back to the stage that you got it from to reacquire it. To put it plainly, this is not good design. Some costumes only appear once in a stage, so if you want to stack up on it, you'll have to replay the stage however many times just to collect more. There's these different coloured gems throughout the level which are used for the Isle of Tims, which I'll mention again later. Anyway, these gems should also be used to buy back costumes from your wardrobe so you don't have to replay levels and waste your time. This seems like a clear oversight to me. I really liked using the speedy cheetah costume found in chapter 7 act 1, but once I lost it, I could not be bothered going back and replaying the whole stage just to get it again. Surely they thought about how repetitive the game would become having to backtrack all the time, and that's just for one costume. If I wanted to stack the cheetahs, then multiple run-throughs would be the only thing I could do, and that is just not fun. I will probably never 100% complete this game, mainly because of balance bound, but also because of this issue with the costumes. I've brushed over the stages while talking about the costumes, so it's time to focus in and talk about what's going on. Each level is pretty small, but what you do is greatly dependent upon whatever human's heart it is. These are pretty simple as the game starts, as chapter 1 focuses upon a farmer who is terrorized by a tornado that ruins his land. So fittingly, the whole chapter focuses upon crops and farmland, with one of the costumes being called Tornado Wolf. The themes get more interesting as they go on, as chapter 7 focuses upon a chess master who lost his winning streak to a younger player. The world's architecture is full of chess references, with the checkered board, chess pieces, and even one of the costumes being a chess piece that fires cannonballs. Some are better than others. While chapter 11 revolves around a firefighter, the levels themselves are kinda boring. They consist of pushing blocks around, waiting for the floor to not be lava anymore, and running past flame traps that want you dead. The costumes aren't that interesting either, and you can't jump as the fire hydrant, you have to solidify the lava to progress. A lot of the enjoyment of these stages is using the costumes to explore and uncover areas you wouldn't have been able to otherwise. So if the costumes suck, it's not going to be an enjoyable time. The best example of this being done right is the third world. The lantern costume sucks, but the spider costume is neat to use, and it's the first example, I'm pretty sure, of a costume that can be used in previous stages. The dusk butterfly fly, while not necessarily special, makes the stage look beautiful when you have to use it. It can only fly at night, so you have to press switches for it to work, and it makes the stage so vibrant. This stage is the only place this costume is used, so it further adds to the problem of having too many costumes, but hey, at least it brings some good visuals alongside it. Some stages mess my head around though. The perspective for some of them is so weird. Chapter 7 is the one that immediately sticks out in my head. These levels are quite big, and when you're going from one place to another, sometimes the level warps in a weird way, which creates a weird effect that I'm sure could give people motion sickness. I have to say though, I didn't run into a set of stages I particularly hated or any that made me bored. I enjoyed going out my way to try and explore everything. Some stages I got all the gold Balan statues without using a guide. I just enjoyed exploring that much. Could it be more engaging? Yes. Don't get me wrong, there are enemies here, but due to the one button design, they go down fairly easily as you can just run into them or jump on them instead. Also, I do agree that the one button design is questionable. I think stripping back the costumes would have been a good idea and giving a small bunch of them multiple things to do, but I'm not frothing at the mouth about it. I couldn't help but think while playing that if Balan was released on the Sega Saturn or Sega Dreamcast, then this game wouldn't have anywhere near the amount of hate. I understand that I've just implied that this game has a dated design, but it's obviously intentional. What's so bad about having a game that strips back all the fancy stuff found in platformers these days and instead opts to keep it simple? Having a game that focuses primarily on collecting, wearing cute outfits, and generally just focuses on positivity isn't a bad thing. It's shocking how feral some people get about this game. With the dreadful scores, I at least expected the gameplay to be awful, but except for Balan's Bound, I never once thought this game deserved the hate it received. It's not the best thing ever, but it's still decent. Even the boss fights surprised me. Let me start by saying the great designs that Balan and Lance have continue on into the bosses. They're the embodiment of corruption within whatever character the chapter focuses upon. Some designs are better than others, but they're also funky, vibrant and fun. I quite liked each fight. There's some weaker ones, like the second and fourth boss fights are quite similar, but everything else is like a melting pot of good designs and enjoyable battles. They focus upon the costumes you would have been wearing during that chapter, and all you really have to do is dodge attacks and wait for the ample time to strike. Some can be exploited pretty easily. I'm not sure what they were thinking regarding the third fight. You can pretty much stay bouncing on the mushrooms to avoid all attacks. The 11th boss as well, if you're wearing the costume that's immune to fire and lava, then this fight is a piece of cake. The boss of chapter 9 wasted a bit of my time though, until I realised you have to literally go opposite her before ground pounding the floor. The final boss Lance is good too. What's unique about this fight is that the game forces you to pick 3 costumes before battle. Pretty weird because you don't know what the fight is going to be like, but effective at building up anticipation. It's rather simple, and when Lance transforms into his second phase, it reminded me of Thanatos from Persona 3. After defeating a boss and healing the heart of whoever, the game rewards you with a very cheesy dance number. The characters dance alongside the residents of the world to a song that isn't even in English, it's in Balinese. Pretty easy to laugh at and make fun of, but you can skip these sequences, which is something I did after sitting through it once. I was pretty stumped the first time I saw this, it just came out of nowhere. I can imagine many people laughing and poking fun at this. The game doesn't help itself. Before wrapping up, I have 2 more elements of the game to discuss. The first is the Garden of Tims. I've left this until the end despite being the hub area of the game because I genuinely have no understanding as to how it works. With the gems you collect throughout the stages, you can spread them amongst flower beds in the Garden of Tims for these creatures called Tims to eat. They're supposed to grow, reproduce, and get better and better until you breed a King Tim, which gives you the Balan costume. I'm not sure how long this is supposed to take, but it probably involves a lot of work that I don't feel like doing. You can also build the Tower of Tims, which I didn't really understand, but whenever I'd feed the little guys and then idle, the numbers seemingly went up. It's not as engaging as other pet simulator minigames you can probably think of, so I just didn't bother. Finally, the music. This genuinely took me by surprise. Hironori Anazawa and Ryo Yamazaki are responsible for the soundtrack, and the music in this game is excellent. It fits perfectly. There were moments within the Garden of Tims when I'd just stand still and absorb all the atmosphere. The peaceful song that accompanied was so relaxing. The music elevates the experience, it makes the stages better, it makes the boss fights better, and overall is a stellar piece of work. It's filled with mysticism and fantasy, and even if you don't appreciate the game on a technical level, the music will probably win you over anyway. One final note, why is this game called Balan Wonderworld? Balan Wonderland would have fit much better, and it actually rhymes. Every time I go to speak to somebody about this game, I instinctively go to say Balan Wonderland, and then I'm hit with the reality that it's Wonderworld. It's a strange choice. You'd think that the rhyme would have been used because it sticks in people's heads and is easier to say. To wrap up, Balan Wonderworld is not the worst platformer ever. It's not the worst game that's been released. It's a slightly above average game that received a lot of hate due to alienating a modern audience. I never ran into any technical faults. I know the Switch version can be problematic, but I played this on the PC for anybody wondering. I have no experience with the console versions. If anything I said sounds intriguing, give the game a go. It is a bit ridiculous that they tried to sell this at full price, but if you get it at a discount, you might find some enjoyment in it like I have. I'd say I'm excited for the future of Balan, but I'm pretty sure Yuji Naka was told this would be his make or break, that this could be the last platform he ever directs, and unfortunately for him, it broke. He's also in a lot of legal trouble, so Balan Wonderworld will probably go down in gaming history as an experiment that didn't work. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you liked the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, hopefully you stick around, and I'll see you next time.